"Mommy, let's go," the toddler beamed, tugging the rope tied around Imani's waist, just as the front door opened and their billionaire father froze. What came out of the child's mouth next? No business deal, no tragedy, no betrayal had ever shattered him like that. Imani Carter had only been at the Whitaker estate for 3 weeks, but the kids already knew where to find her heart. It started with a pillow, then a rope, then a squeal from Maddie, the smallest of the billionaire's 3-year-old triplets. "Mommy, be the horsey again," she giggled, her voice full of innocence, her curls bouncing as she dragged the pillow across the polished floor. Imani turned from the laundry basket, already smiling. Her body was tired, her knees ached, but her heart surrendered to these children every single time. She dropped to all fours. "Again?" she laughed. "You all trying to ride me straight into the weekend, huh?" Micah tied the rope gently around her waist like they had the last 2 mornings. Miles grabbed the pillow and plopped it onto her back. The moment Maddie climbed on, the living room burst into the kind of joy that didn't exist on contracts or clock-ins. It wasn't her job to love them like this, but she did, completely. They rode her through the long hallway like she was theirs, because to them, she was. She was the one who sang them to sleep when nightmares came. The one who remembered Micah liked his juice room temperature, and Maddie needed her socks warmed in the dryer first. Imani hadn't come here to be anyone's mother, but here she was, galloping like a fool because it made them laugh. Across town, Graham Whitaker sat in the back of a black Bentley with a phone to his ear and a steel heart in his chest. His voice was clipped, emotionless. "Send the numbers to my office. I'll look over them later." He ended the call before the client could respond. The car turned into the winding gates of Winding Cedar Estate, the custom iron sign glinting under the morning sun. His estate was pristine, quiet, expensive, sterile, like everything else in his life. He hadn't planned on coming home this early, but something Maddie had said on FaceTime last night unsettled him. "Daddy, Mommy was here today." He told himself she was confused. She was only 3, still mixing things up, still clinging to a ghost they'd all buried over a year ago. He stepped through the door, unbuttoning his cuff, and then he heard it. Laughter, wild, unfiltered, free. He followed it down the hall, toward the sunroom. And then he stopped. Imani was on all fours, her back slightly hunched under a pillow, a rope tied loosely around her waist. All 3 of his children were on her, giggling, holding onto her like she was their world. His chest tightened. "Mommy, let's go," Maddie cheered, bouncing gently on Imani's back. Imani froze. So did Graham. And then Maddie turned to her brothers and said it, loud, clear, certain. "See? I told you Daddy doesn't love us like Mommy does." Graham's breath caught. No business deal, no betrayal. Not even the moment the doctor told him his wife wouldn't survive the delivery. Nothing had ever shattered him like that. Graham didn't move, couldn't speak. The words his daughter had just said kept echoing in his head like a gunshot in an empty hallway. "See? I told you Daddy doesn't love us like Mommy does." He blinked. Once. Twice. His fingers tightened around the doorknob, the metal suddenly too cold. Imani slowly turned her head. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her breath was shaky, her eyes locked with his, and for a second, neither of them knew what to say. The triplets didn't notice the tension. They kept riding, laughing, chanting, "Giddy up, Mummy," like it was the best morning of their lives. But Graham wasn't hearing them anymore. He was staring at the woman he barely knew, who was now being called Mommy by all 3 of his kids. And not just in play. They said it like they meant it, like they believed it. Imani gently sat back, lowering the kids to the floor. All right," she whispered, trying to keep her voice light, like she hadn't just been emotionally punched in front of her employer. "Let's get cleaned up, huh? Daddy's home." The kids looked up and saw him. "Daddy!" Micah shouted, running toward him. Graham caught him instinctively, his arms remembering the weight of his son, even if his mind was stuck somewhere else. Miles followed, hugging his leg. Maddie stayed behind with Imani, holding her hand tightly. Graham's voice was low. kids. Go play in your room." They hesitated. Imani gave a gentle nod. "It's okay. I'll be right there." When they were gone, the silence between them took on weight, heavy, raw. Graham stepped forward. "I heard what she said," he said quietly. Imani nodded once, eyes cast down. "I know. Do you correct them when they call you that?" Her answer came fast, almost too fast. "I used to, I tried, but then Maddie started crying every time I did. So no, not anymore." His jaw tightened. "They think you're their mother." "They think I care," she corrected, her voice shaking now. "Because I do." He stared at her, not with anger, not even confusion, but something else, something he hadn't let himself feel in a long time. Grief. "They lost their mom, Miss Carter." "I know," she whispered. "So did I." He looked up. "I wasn't hired to be a replacement," she said, "but I wasn't going to sit here and watch them beg for affection either." The room was still. Sunlight poured through the tall windows. It should have felt warm, but it didn't, because deep down Graham knew he hadn't just lost his wife. He'd lost his place in his own children's hearts, and another woman, quiet, patient, and overlooked, had unknowingly taken his seat. If this moment hit you even just a little, don't just watch and scroll, subscribe. These stories don't just entertain, they remind us what we're missing. Graham turned his back without a word. He needed air. Imani stood alone in the sunroom, hands trembling, wondering if she'd just lost the job, or if something deeper had just begun. Graham sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the untouched glass of scotch in his hand. It was still early, but his body felt like it was dragging through the last hours of the war. The hallway outside was quiet. Too quiet. He could usually hear the kids banging pots in the kitchen or watching cartoons at full volume, but tonight it was as if the house had agreed to hold its breath. He hadn't spoken to Imani since the morning. He didn't know what to say. Every time he tried to make sense of it, of Maddie's words, of the way Imani held them, how their eyes lit up only for her, he spiraled. His late wife, Rachel, had been gone just over a year, but it still felt like yesterday. And in his head he thought he'd been holding it together, thought he'd done enough by giving them food, shelter, safety. He never stopped to ask if that was love, or just survival. In the guest quarters, Imani stood in front of the mirror, brushing her curls out slowly. Her hand paused mid-stroke. She hadn't heard from Graham all day. Not a word, no scolding, no formal warning, but no apology either. She knew she'd crossed a line, but how could she regret it? They needed her, and if that made her a problem, so be it. She sat on the edge of her bed, grabbed her phone, and opened a blank message to her sister. "He heard Maddie call me Mommy. The way he looked at me, I don't know if I still have a job tomorrow." She typed it, stared at it, then deleted the whole thing. No one would understand. She barely did. The next morning came with grey skies and low thunder, like even the weather was unsure of itself. The kids were unusually quiet at breakfast. Maddie kept glancing down the hallway. Miles poked at his cereal. Micah asked the question Imani had been dreading. "Is Daddy mad at you?" She crouched next to him, brushing his curls back gently. "No, baby. Sometimes grown-ups just have to think for a while." "Did we do something wrong?" Maddie whispered. Imani's throat tightened. "No. You did everything right." In the doorway, Graham stood in silence, out of sight, listening, still not ready to speak, but unable to stay away. His mind wanted to keep this simple. She was the help. The kids were confused. This would pass. But his heart whispered something else. Maybe he had confused silence with strength. And maybe, just maybe, love was supposed to sound like this. Real ones don't wait till the end to hit subscribe. If this story's already hit something real in you, show love back. Subscribe now. Graham turned and walked away again. Not because he didn't care, but because caring felt terrifying. The storm rolled in by noon. Rain tapped steadily against the high windows of Winding Cedar Estate as thunder rumbled in the distance. a low reminder that some things build quietly, and then demand to be heard. Imani was folding laundry in the family room when Florence, the head housekeeper, peeked in, umbrella in hand. "The sitter can't make it," she said, annoyed. "Storms flooded half the county roads, and the chef's stuck behind a tree that fell on Lenox Avenue." Imani blinked. "Wait, so no dinner? No chef, no sitter, just you, and the triplets, and Mr. Whittaker, of course." Her stomach dropped. She had just barely managed to stay invisible the last day. No confrontation, no dismissal. But now, dinner with him. Meanwhile, Graham was already in his home office, staring at the window like it might offer an escape. The email he was trying to read had been open for an hour. He hadn't gotten past the first line. "Daddy?" He turned. All three of them ran in, barefoot, pajamas still on even though it was past lunch. Maddie climbed into his lap without asking. She hadn't done that in months. "Miss Manny says you have to eat dinner with us." "Does she now?" he said softly, wrapping an arm around his daughter as Miles and Micah scrambled into the chairs nearby. "She said it's family night," Micah added, smiling like that word still meant something in this house. And just like that, he was outnumbered. Again. Dinner was quiet at first. The triplets filled the silence with ketchup-covered chicken strips and mashed potatoes. Imani moved between the kitchen and the table, refilling drinks, wiping mouths, pretending not to notice the tension in the air every time Graham looked at her, or didn't. At one point, Miles knocked over his cup of juice. "Sorry," he blurted out, eyes wide. Graham stood quickly to grab napkins, but Imani was already there. She crouched beside Miles, hand on his shoulder, and whispered something only he could hear. He calmed instantly. Graham watched the way she touched his son's back, the way his son's shoulders softened, the way he leaned into her without thinking. That used to be Rachel's gift, not his. He didn't know what Imani had said, but in that moment, he knew it was something he couldn't have. After the kids were down for bed, the house fell into that deep, strange quiet again, but this time they were both still in it. She passed him in the hallway, her hand brushing the edge of the banister. "I didn't mean for it to get like this," she said softly, not looking at him. Graham stopped walking. He wanted to say something sharp, distant, professional, but all that came out was, "You're good with them." She finally turned. Their eyes locked. "I love them," she said, not ashamed, not embarrassed. "That's not in the job description, but it's the truth." He didn't reply. He just nodded and walked toward his room. Imani stood there for a long time after, staring at nothing. Sometimes silence is safer than what's waiting underneath it, and sometimes silence is the loudest cry for help. If you've ever felt what it's like to love someone else's kids more than you're allowed to, hit that subscribe button. Someone else out there knows exactly what you're holding in. The next morning arrived with sun, but no warmth. Graham was already dressed before the kids woke up. Suit jacket, polished shoes, and the same emotionally armored face he wore to every board meeting. He had a fundraiser to attend, something glossy and forgettable in the city, where rich men talked about saving the world while their homes quietly fell apart. Before he left, he peeked into the nursery. They were still sleeping. Maddie's tiny hand curled around the edge of her blanket, her face pressed into the stuffed elephant Imani had repaired last week, with needle and thread, like she was sewing a soul back into something broken. He closed the door quietly, then headed out. Back at the estate, Imani cleaned up breakfast plates with Florence. The kitchen was quiet, until Florence spoke. "He wasn't always like this, you know." Imani looked up. "Like what?" "Cold, distant. Rachel's death. It did something to him. To all of them." "I figured," Imani said, rinsing the plates slowly. "Grief's a monster. It wears different faces." Florence hesitated. "You know what he did the day she died?" Imani turned off the water. She didn't know why she wanted to hear it, but she did. "He buried himself in meetings, called contractors, ordered renovations, took out every photograph of her in the house by the end of the week, said the kids were too young to remember anyway." Imani's chest tightened. "That's why they're clinging to you," Florence continued. You let them remember. Later that evening, Imani was folding laundry again when she noticed something odd. A little blue baby blanket tucked behind the dryer. Not just any blanket, the one Maddie refused to sleep without for weeks when she first arrived. She held it in her hands gently, trying to smooth out the wrinkles. A tag stitched on the corner caught her eye. R. Whitaker. For Maddie, love always. It was hand-sewn, the threads imperfect. She recognized the stitching. Not factory-made, made by a mother. Her throat caught. She sat down slowly, blanket in hand, memories pressing down on her like weight. She had sewn the same kind of tag once, years ago, for her own daughter. A daughter she hadn't seen in almost 4 years. Imani pressed the blanket to her chest, tears pricking her eyes. She hadn't planned to stay here this long. She never stayed anywhere long. It hurt too much. But these kids, they broke every rule she'd set for herself. Later that night, Graham returned. The fundraiser had left him exhausted. Too many handshakes. Too much pretending. He found Imani in the laundry room, sitting on the floor with that blue blanket. He was about to turn away, but something stopped him. She looked up, her eyes glassy but strong. "I lost her," she said softly. "My daughter." He didn't move. She was 2 when the courts gave custody to her father. Said I wasn't stable enough. I was working nights, couch surfing, doing everything I could to stay afloat. But I couldn't win. Graham stayed silent. "She'll be 6 next month. I haven't seen her since she was 3. A long silence filled the air. "I didn't come here to find someone else's children, but they found me." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry if I overstepped, but I'm not sorry I loved them." Graham sat on the bench across from her. He didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing that felt honest. "I'm sorry too, not for her, for himself, for not seeing what was right in front of him." The next morning, the air felt different. The usual heaviness that lingered in the halls of Winding Cedar Estate had lifted just a little, like something painful had been spoken into the open, and now the house could breathe again. Graham found Imani in the garden, crouched beside the hydrangeas with Maddie on her lap. The little girl was holding a tiny watering can, pouring uneven streams onto the soil as Imani gently guided her hand. "She wants to grow her own flowers," Imani said, not looking up. Graham stood still, watching them. "She ever had a garden before?" "Not that I know of, but kids don't need history to believe in things, they just need someone to hand them the watering can." He almost smiled. Later that day, the triplets begged for a movie night. Graham hadn't said yes to one of those since Rachel died, but this time he didn't say no. So by 8 p.m., the living room was covered in pillows and popcorn crumbs. Maddie fell asleep on Imani's lap. Micah curled up beside her. Miles dozed off with his head resting against Graham's shoulder, something that hadn't happened in over 6 months. The movie played on, but neither adult was really watching. Instead, Graham looked across the cushions and whispered, "She would have liked you, you know." Imani's eyes met his. "Rachel," he said softly. "My wife." She was quiet too. But she had a way of seeing people, the kind of seeing that made you feel like you mattered. "You have that." Imani didn't respond right away. Her fingers moved gently through Maddie's curls. "She must have been an amazing mother," she finally said. "She was, and I wasn't ready to lose her, so I tried not to lose anything else." He paused, voice tightening, but in doing that, I almost lost them anyway. A silence followed, not awkward, sacred. For a long while they just sat there, 2 people who had loved and lost and somehow found a sliver of peace in the chaos of children's laughter and the stillness that followed it. "Do you want to see a picture of her?" Graham asked quietly. Imani looked surprised. "Only if you want to," he added. He pulled out his phone, scrolled, then turned the screen toward her. A photo of Rachel appeared, holding the triplets as newborns, her eyes tired but shining. "She looks kind," Imani whispered. She was. For the first time, Graham didn't flinch at the memory. He let it rest between them like a candle, glowing but not burning. The clock ticked past 10 p.m. They sat there, neither ready to get up, and when Imani finally stood, gently lifting Maddie to take her to bed, Graham didn't stop her. But he didn't walk away either. He just watched her. And for the first time in a long, long while, he didn't feel alone in his own house. It happened 2 days later. Florence was the one who found the letter, folded neatly on the kitchen counter, addressed to Mr. Whitaker, with Imani's initials in the corner. She handed it to him while he was reading to Maddie in the library. He recognized the handwriting instantly. His voice faltered. Maddie looked up. "Why'd you stop?" He forced a smile. "Go on, baby. I'll be right back." He read the letter in the hallway alone. "Dear Mr. Whitaker, please know this isn't about the children. They are the only thing that's made this place feel like home. But I think my presence here has blurred too many lines. I never intended to cause confusion, and I certainly never meant to replace anyone. I just did what came naturally. I loved them. I need to go before I overstay something that was never mine to begin with. Thank you for the opportunity. Imani Carter." His chest tightened as he folded the letter back with shaking hands. She was leaving. No confrontation. No goodbye. Just gone. He found her in the laundry room, folding one last set of pajamas with her duffel bag zipped beside her. He didn't knock. "You were just going to disappear?" he asked. Imani turned, startled. "You left a letter?" She looked down. "I figured that'd be easier." "For who?" Silence. "I trusted you," he said, voice low. "I let you into my home, into my kids' lives. And now you're running?" Her eyes welled. "I'm not running. I'm letting go." "Why?" His voice cracked, and he hated that it did. "After everything, why?" "Because they're not mine, Graham, and every day I stay, they think I am." She swallowed hard. "I already lost one child. I can't survive losing 3 more. He stepped closer. "Then don't leave." Imani shook her head. "This is temporary for you. It's a job for me. But for them? It's everything, and I can't be everything if I'm nothing on paper." His jaw clenched. "You think I care about paper? I think one day you'll move on, find someone with your name, your world, and when you do, what happens to me? What happens to the only mommy they remember?" His breath caught. She was right, and that's what made it unbearable. "You should go," he said, his voice cold now. Measured, guarded, the armor snapping back on. She nodded once, picked up her bag, and walked past him. The house, once full of children's laughter and light, felt empty before the front door even closed. Graham stood in the quiet and told himself he had done the right thing, but it didn't feel like it. It felt like a loss, one he couldn't name and wouldn't know how to replace. If you've ever pushed someone away before they could leave you first, yeah, you're not alone. Hit subscribe. Some heartbreaks come from survival, not cruelty. The house was too quiet now. Without Imani, the kids stopped laughing as much. Meals were shorter. Bedtime came with more tears. And Graham was unraveling in the smallest ways. He found himself standing outside her old room one night. Door cracked open, lights off, the faintest trace of her still in the air. Her favorite mug still sat in the dish rack. Her laundry basket was gone. But the space didn't feel empty. It felt hollow. He tried to focus on work. Sat at his desk for hours, staring at reports he didn't understand anymore. Words meant nothing now. Nothing did. The triplets stopped asking where she went. That was worse than the questions. One night, Maddie crawled into bed beside him. "Daddy," she whispered in the dark. "Yeah, baby." "Did Mommy leave because we were bad?" His throat closed. "No," he said. "She left because I made a mistake." Maddie pressed her face into his chest and didn't say another word. Down the road, in a small studio apartment with 2 thin walls and flickering lights, Imani sat with her knees pulled to her chest, scrolling through photos on her phone. The triplets. Maddie asleep with her thumb in her mouth. Miles holding a wooden spoon like a sword. Micah pouting because she cut his toast wrong. She smiled through tears. Her sister called twice. She didn't answer either time. She couldn't explain it. couldn't find the words to describe what it felt like to leave 3 children who weren't biologically hers, but felt more like home than any place she'd ever known. She opened a new message on her phone, typed, "Tell Maddie I miss her," then deleted it, typed again, "Can I come by sometime to see them?" Deleted that too. She sat frozen, phone in hand. Then finally, without thinking too hard, she typed 3 simple words, "Are they okay?" and pressed send. Back at the estate, Graham's phone lit up at 2:14 a.m. He saw her name. He sat up slowly, read the message twice. "Are they okay?" His thumbs hovered above the screen for a long time. Then, for the first time in days, he smiled. Just a little. He replied, "They're not. I'm not. Come home." The message sent. The screen dimmed, and he waited. Because this time, the next choice wasn't his. It was hers. It was raining again when she returned. Not a storm this time, just a steady drizzle that painted the windows in soft grey. Imani stood at the gates of Winding Cedar Estate, suitcase in hand, unsure if she was making a mistake, or walking back into the only place that had ever felt right. The gate opened before she could buzz. Inside, the house was quiet, too quiet. She stepped through the door and froze. The first thing she saw was the rope, lying in the hallway, neatly coiled, waiting. Her breath hitched. A tiny voice rang out from down the hallway. "Mommy?" It was Maddie, barefoot, pajamas still rumpled, holding her stuffed elephant against her chest like a shield. The rope fell from her little hands as she ran. Imani dropped to her knees just in time to catch her. "I missed you," Maddie cried, her voice muffled in Imani's neck. "I missed you too, baby." Micah and Miles followed, sprinting down the hall. They didn't say anything, just threw their arms around her. All 3 of them, like they'd been holding their breath for days. And then she looked up. Graham was standing at the top of the stairs. He didn't speak. Not at first. He just looked at her, like he was afraid to believe she was real. But then, he took the stairs slowly, stopped in front of her. "You came back," he said. "You asked me to." He nodded once, his voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't asking for the job back. I know. I was asking for—" He couldn't finish, so she did it for him. "I know." He reached down and picked up the rope, looked at it in his hand like it was more than just a toy, like it was the thread that had pulled them all back together. "They still call you Mommy?" "They always did," she said softly. He looked into her eyes. They weren't wrong. She didn't cry, not yet. Instead, she stood, looked at the triplets, then back at him. "Family isn't always about blood." "I know," he whispered, and then in a house that had once echoed only with silence and grief. There was laughter again, real laughter. Later that night they played horse again, just like before. This time Graham joined in, on his knees crawling beside her while the triplets screamed with joy. He'd never looked more ridiculous, or more free. Imani caught his eyes across the room, and for the first time, he didn't feel like he was chasing ghosts anymore. He felt home. Do you believe true love can survive even after being tested this hard? If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. There's more where this came from.